There's been all sorts of news coming out of the US when it comes to the upcoming presidential election, and who better to take us through it than Nigel Farage, especially what it means for investors and financial markets. So, Nigel, first of all, let's chat about the change in the polls over the last few weeks. Obviously, the US election is a state-by-state issue with the Electoral College. It seems to me that in the key swing states, there has been quite a significant move towards Trump. Does this matter? Is this just a short-term blip, or does this suggest that Trump will indeed win?
Something's happening. And I was looking yesterday at the betting odds, and I can't quite believe it. Trump's evens. So I am today going to have a big bet on Trump. I think evens is a remarkable price. Now, of course, what happens between now and November the 5th, there are all sorts of events that might occur. It seems to me there's almost no more bad news can possibly come into Donald Trump's direction. I mean, they are throwing the kitchen sink at him. He is proving to have whether you love him or hate him, he's proving to have the resilience of an ox. Biden looks ever more desperate. I thought very interesting, the Chinese tariffs announcement this week that was put on by Biden was a desperate attempt to try and get on Trump's turf. Because particularly, I thought when Trump went to the Midwest and spoke to the automotive workers the other day, suddenly trade union members are voting Trump. I mean, this isn't supposed to happen. This is America. The Democrats own the trade union movement, but I mean, the argument what will happen to US battery plants, to US EVs with China is something that's resonated very, very hard. So in political terms, he's dictating the agenda. The Biden fight back is partly to copy him. It's also partly to mock him, be rude about him. We saw a strange initiative from Biden this week where he challenged Trump to a debate. I mean, what? I can't believe it. So there's now talk potentially of an early presidential debate. Now that matters, and here's why. Last time around in 2020, there were two debates. The first one, I'm convinced Trump had COVID, because the next day the 2 days afterwards, he was diagnosed with it, right? He was not on his game at all, aggressive, short-tempered, didn't come across well. By the time the second debate came, he absolutely crushed Biden. Biden was all at sea. Everyone, even CNN, admitted that Trump had won. The problem was, by the time of the second debate, 100 million people had already cast their votes because of all this early mail-out ballot stuff. And, ever since Nixon v. Kennedy, now over 60 years ago, these TV debates matter. They matter enormously, particularly for an audience who don't live and breathe politics, current affairs, financial markets. They're busy living their lives. They've got a Labrador, 2.6 kids, a mortgage, a couple of cars, in the parking lot. So their attention span to politics is very, very small. Therefore, these debates matter. And, 80 million people will watch it, 90 million people will watch it. And it really matters. So I think an early debate in June, if it takes place, is again very much the Trump's advantage. So, yeah, I think everything is going his way. It almost doesn't matter what Stormy Daniels says. I'll spare our viewers and listeners the detail. But I mean, it's a bit like Boris, isn't it? It's a bit like Boris. I mean, people didn't vote for Boris in 2019 because they thought he was the Pope. They were fully aware of his flaws, and they sort of said, well, we're all human, we all sin. This stuff they're chucking at him, no one believes it. It doesn't matter. So yeah, I'm more bullish now. I'm more bullish in the last 3 or 4 days about Trump than I've been at any point in this campaign cycle. Now, the joker in the pack, of course, is Robert Kennedy Jr. He's running as an outside independent. The last serious run we saw was Ross Perot. You've got to go back to 1992. I'm Ross, you're the boss. It was an amazing campaign. And in many ways, he set the groundwork for Trump. I'm not part of the establishment. I'm a successful businessman. There are a lot of problems in our country that need courage to deal with them. And he got 17% of the vote, which is a heck of a lot. And there's no doubt that damaged the Republicans, it damaged George Bush Sr. far more than it did the Democrats. And that's why Clinton won. I mean, the pro-intervention, I've no doubt, led to Clinton getting that kind of majority that he did. It's very difficult to assess where Robert Kennedy Jr. takes his votes from. Naturally on the left of politics, but deeply skeptical of big government, deeply skeptical of the vaccine, deeply skeptical of the way in which many American states locked down. And so there's an element of the Republican libertarian movement who, don't like the fact that Trump went for warp speed on the vaccine. So he's going to take votes from both. I assess the impact of Kennedy as neutral. I don't think he can outright win any states. He might win one or two tiddlers on the East Coast. That's possible, but they had very, very few votes in this rather complicated electoral college that America has. So for all of those reasons, I think Trump looks good. Now, if you talk to Trump, and I've been to Mar-a-Lago twice. I've met him 3 times this year already. Once at the conference, and twice I went to see him in his office at Mar-a-Lago. And one of the things is absolutely right up there in his top 2 or 3. I mean, obviously the border is the top. Over 7 million illegals have poured in since Biden became president. The numbers are so huge, they're hard to even comprehend. But issue number 2 or 3 for Trump is the cost of living and inflation. And the Trump argument is very clear. It is that one of the biggest costs for all families is energy. It's what you put in your car. It's what you pay for your domestic bills. I mean, hey, it's the same on our side of the pond too. And his argument is that Biden has restricted the new development of shale gas, the new development of oil, and that he will, as he says, drill, baby, drill. And he did turn America for the first time, in modern times, into being a net exporter of energy. And indeed, without the LNG coming into Europe, Putin would have had a much bigger hold over much of Europe than he's had. And that's a point that gets forgotten. So drill, baby, drill, I would have thought has clear investment implications for what's going to happen if Trump gets back in, as I believe he will. And this is not music to the ears of the ESG community or anybody who's politically correct. But no, I think you're going to see, with a Trump win, a massive boom in US energy production.
The big story of the 2016 election was the social media side of things, and Trump sort of cracked it, same with Brexit. A big story for 2020 was about that mail-in voting issue that you mentioned, and the fact that the election was almost decided well before the election occurred. What do you think is going to be the big issue this time around? Is it going to be that third-party challenge and speculation, or he's not a third party, he's just independent, but the speculation that shifts vote from one side more so than the other? Or is there any other issue that you can see that becomes the narrative that we all use to explain the election outcome in a year's time?
Yeah, obviously Kennedy will be a factor, but I don't think when it comes to November, it's going to be as big as people think. And also some of his views are pretty crackers. And they will get more elevation, I think, as time goes on. Impressive speaker though he is. I don't know him. A lot of my friends have met him and have all been quite impressed by him, but I don't believe that's going to be the really big issue. The key determinant has to be what is happening in America, what is happening in American cities, what has happened with people's living standards and conditions. And of course, Reagan famously in '84 asked the question, ask yourself a question, are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? Well, the answer was, yeah, very much so. And he won 49 states out of 50. It's quite strong to think back to that. So it's that sense of well-being and that sense that we're the richest, most successful, most powerful country in the world. And my sense is it's that's under threat, that people feel uneasy about the widespread open use of drugs wherever you go. Wherever you go. You can't walk through New York now without the overpowering smell of cannabis, even though it's not legal there. It's a sense that law and order is not what it was. It's a sense that the opening up of the border has made America a less secure place. And it's the sense that the sort of things that people's parents were able to afford, like the condo in Florida, it's a very good example of what well-paid blue-collar workers in, say, the car industry could do 20, 30 years ago, and they can't do it now. So it's about a sense of, is America, despite the fact the economy is going gangbusters compared to us, but a sense that this is not quite the America that people know. And I think that if Trump can capture that mood and make people think that there are things government can do to kind of get back to, hence, make America great again. Make America great again is say to people, hey, look at the old movies, look at the way America was, and look at the way America is now. So I think that the big decider on this is going to be emotional. It'll be that emotional feeling. And of course, lots of rational factors like cost of living, safety, education, etc. going into it. But I think it's an emotional feeling. And I think that's what wins it for it.
It seems bizarre to me that Biden's still there at all, to be honest. But I suppose Kamala Harris is the alternative. So let's consider what the investment angles are here. If the probability of a Trump victory continues to rise over the next few months, what is the impact on financial markets? You mentioned already the issue of tariffs with EVs. They almost had like a schoolboy, my dad's better than your dad's story with the tariffs. One person proposed 50% tariffs, and I'm 100%, and now you got 200%. It's a bit childish, but it does matter to the stocks that are actually impacted by these policies. So what are you looking at in terms of opportunities?
Well, historically, of course, we always think of tariffs as being regressive. Classic economic thinking is that tariffs actually slow down economic activity, and that therefore that's better. The Ricardo principles. We're going 200 years, and free marketers have believed in those things solidly for the last couple of centuries. It is different now. It isn't that trade with China is having this multiplier effect and making us all feel richer and better. It's that we know that the Chinese are undercutting us. We know that, take the steel industry, for example, where China just have flooded the market with millions of tons of excess steel that they've produced at a loss and quite happily kept on producing as a means of shutting down the competition because they've got a long-term aim of where they want to be strategically with steel in the world. Things are different. And when Trump, in the early days of 2017, when Trump first started sort of talking about tariffs with China, the stock markets fell. The stock markets fell because that was the classical thinking. Now I think, given that the Dow is made up of American stocks, far more than global stocks, unlike FTSE, which is a bit different. Hence, when the pound falls, the stock market goes up. We're in a different place. But the Dow is predominantly American companies. And I think there's now a realization that actually unfair trade does damage to you. Whereas genuine free trade can make you more competitive, can really keep you on your toes. So I don't see that agenda being negative for the stock market at all. I know the Dow's at a crackpot level, and at some point, in the next few years, the credit situation will bite. But I do expect, between now and the election, and particularly if Trump looks like winning, I think a lot of people will say this is very good for the American economy.
Let's try and think more than one step ahead here. What would be the geopolitical response around the world to a Trump victory? Are you expecting, there's all very clear two narratives here. One, that Trump managed to keep peace and not enter any new wars, and Biden's gone back in again. The other side is that Trump is this dangerous, boisterous character who risks starting wars with his commentary. Right. Which of the two is it, and how is that going to impact stocks as well?
You know what? It won't be like 2016. There won't be the same sense of shock and horror. I even find myself now not the only commentator on this side of the pond that supports him. We've even got senior people like Boris Johnson say, the world was safer with Trump. So no, there won't be the global shock there was last time round at all. And I think many people will say, well, you know what? Given what we're facing with Putin, given what we're facing with the Middle East, given what we're facing with China, a strong leader is a good thing.